Imagine being so rich that when you traveled through a foreign country, you accidentally crashed their entire economy, just by giving away gold. Imagine being so wealthy that historians today still cannot calculate your net worth. That modern economists look at the numbers and simply say, too vast to imagine. Every rich man you have ever heard of, every name associated with wealth and power in modern history, none of them come close. This is the story of Mansa Musa, the African king who was, without question, the richest human being who has ever lived on this earth. And most of the world was never taught his name. To understand Mansa Musa, you first need to understand the world he came from. The year is 1280. While much of the world is still finding its footing, caught in conflict, disease, and poverty, on the other side of the world, the Mali Empire is quietly becoming the most powerful civilization on the planet. Stretching across what is today Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Mali, and parts of Nigeria, the Mali Empire sat on top of the largest gold and salt reserves in the known world. Gold and salt were the oil and gas of the medieval world. Whoever controlled them controlled everything. In 1312, a man named Musa Keita ascended to the throne of this empire. He would later be known across the entire world by one name, Mansa Musa. Mansa, meaning King of Kings. And he was about to show the world exactly what that title meant. So how rich was he? Exactly. Historians and economists who have attempted to calculate his wealth estimate it at approximately $400 billion in today's money. Some say the number is closer to $1 trillion. Others simply gave up trying. The truth is, no number does it justice. His wealth was so vast, so deeply woven into the land itself, that it existed beyond calculation. But here is what makes his story different from every other wealthy man in history. He didn't hide his wealth. He didn't lock it in a vault. He didn't hoard it. He wore it, shared it, walked with it. His palace was decorated in gold. His army carried gold. His servants carried golden staffs just to walk beside him. Even his horse's equipment was made of gold. But nothing, absolutely nothing, demonstrated his wealth more than what happened in 1324. In 1324, Mansa Musa decided to make the Hajj, the Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca. A religious journey, a spiritual obligation. But Mansa Musa didn't just go to Mecca. He brought 60,000 people with him. 60,000 people. His entourage included 12,000 personal servants, each one dressed in Persian silk, 500 royal attendants, each carrying a golden staff weighing nearly 3 kilograms, and 80 camels, each carrying between 50 to 300 pounds of pure gold dust. He passed through the city of Cairo, Egypt, and what happened next is one of the most remarkable events in human history. Mansa Musa was generous, deeply, extraordinarily generous. He gave gold to the poor on the streets. He gave gold to mosques. He gave gold to officials. He gave gold to merchants. He gave gold to anyone who came near him. He gave away so much gold in Cairo that he single-handedly caused hyperinflation across the entire North African and Middle Eastern economy. The value of gold collapsed across Egypt, Arabia, and beyond for the next 12 years. Think about that. One man, on a religious trip, accidentally destroyed the economy of an entire region simply by being too generous. The people of Cairo were so stunned that word spread to Europe almost immediately. Cartographers, map makers, began redrawing their maps of the world, and in the center of Africa, they drew one image above all others: a black king, sitting on a throne, holding a golden scepter, wearing a golden crown, and beside him, one word: Rex Musa, King Musa. For the first time in European history, an African king was placed on the map, not as a myth, not as a curiosity, but as the most powerful and wealthy ruler on earth. But Mansa Musa wasn't just rich. He was a builder. He used his wealth to transform the Mali Empire into a center of global civilization. He built the Djinguirebe Mosque in Timbuktu, a structure that still stands today, over 700 years later. He turned the city of Timbuktu into one of the greatest centers of learning the world has ever seen. At its peak, the University of Timbuktu had over 25,000 students, more than most institutions of the same era anywhere on Earth. Scholars, poets, scientists, and mathematicians traveled from across the world to study there. While much of the world was burning knowledge, Africa was writing it. He built roads, he built libraries, he built mosques and schools and trade routes that connected Africa to the rest of the world. Under his rule, the Mali Empire didn't just have gold, it had knowledge, power, civilization. So why don't we know this story? It is a question worth sitting with. In 1337, Mansa Musa passed away. He was approximately 57 years old. A man who had walked across deserts with 60,000 people, who had shaken the economy of entire nations, who had built mosques and universities that outlasted empires. Gone at 57. And here is something history rarely admits. Nobody knows exactly how he died. After over 700 years, historians and scholars still debate the cause of his death. No clear record. No definitive answer. For a man of his stature, that silence itself says something. What we do know is this: he reigned for 25 years, and in those 25 years, he built something the world had never seen before and has never quite seen since. He was succeeded by his son, Magan, a young ruler who inherited the greatest empire on earth and struggled under its weight. Because that is the other truth about greatness. It is incredibly difficult to pass on. After Mansa Musa's death, the Mali Empire slowly began to decline. Weak successors, internal power struggles, trade routes shifting, and eventually, invasion from neighboring forces. But let that land for a moment. Empires rise and empires fall. That is not unique to Africa. That is the story of every great civilization that has ever existed, from Rome to Persia to the Mongols. Nothing built by human hands lasts forever. But what happened next is where history gets complicated. As colonialism spread across the continent over the following centuries, much of what had been documented, the manuscripts, the records, the libraries, was lost. Some destroyed, some scattered, some simply neglected and forgotten over time. It was not always intentional. History is rarely that simple. But the result was the same. A civilization that had produced some of the greatest scholarship, architecture, and wealth the world had ever seen, slowly faded from the story the world told about itself. Not because it wasn't real, not because it wasn't remarkable, but because the people who survived to write history wrote it from where they stood. And Mansa Musa was far from where they stood. Mansa Musa did not need validation from the world to be great. His greatness existed long before the world knew his name. The mosques he built still stand. His manuscripts still exist. His gold still lines the earth beneath Mali. And his story, the real story, has never truly disappeared. It was simply waiting. He was not a myth. He was not a fairy tale invented to make people feel good. He was a real man who built a real empire, who fed real people, who changed the real world. History is complicated. It is never fully good or fully evil. It is written by those who survive it, and shaped by those who choose to remember it honestly. What we owe Mansa Musa, what we owe every forgotten story, is not anger. We owe them honesty. Because a story this powerful doesn't need exaggeration. It doesn't need an enemy. It doesn't need outrage. It just needs to be told. There are thousands of stories like this one, hidden in the gaps of what we were taught, waiting in the silence between the lines of history books. Stories that deserve the same honesty, the same respect, the same light. This is Echoes of the Forgotten, where every story gets told the way it deserves. If this moved you, share it with someone, because that is how forgotten stories survive.